Hi, my name is Whitney Milam. Welcome to my channel. Today is part 2 of my series on how I gained over 200 pounds. If you didn't see part 1, it gives a little more backstory, my first diet, dealing with bullies. So check that out before watching this video. So where I left off the story, I was 14 years old and I was roughly 120, 125 pounds. Very average kid with very poor self-esteem. And then comes high school. High school can be a pretty challenging time for a lot of people, and for me, going into that situation with such low self-esteem already, it was really challenging. I had this perception of myself, and whether or not it was true, I still had this idea that I was bigger. And I didn't get teased in high school or anything like that. There was no name calling. People were actually pretty civil. Not like grade school. We were a little bit more mature than that, surprisingly enough. But having the self-image that I had at the time, I would hear certain comments and take them to the extreme. So I remember getting fitted for a costume for a musical that I was in my freshman year. And one of the female teachers took my measurements and said, "Oh, you've got good birthing hips." And to me, that was like, you don't have a teenager's figure. You have plenty of room to push out a baby. Like, it was a weird comment. I think that to this day, but I wasn't mad at her for saying it. I just thought that it was true, that I was bigger. And so it was little things like that that fed into that mindset that I had. But throughout high school, I was pretty active. I wasn't in any sports, but I did show choir sophomore through senior year. And there was a lot of dancing, a lot of rehearsals, but I did start to develop not the greatest eating habits. I was in a couple long-term relationships with bigger guys, and they were more independent, they were older than me, and so, we could drive and go and get fast food. And having been so restricted on a Weight Watchers plan for so long, I started to develop this idea that eating bad things or a lot of food was like naughty and fun and dangerous. And so it was almost like, oh my gosh, I had 2 Big Macs, I'm so bad, which is stupid. But I mean, we kind of have that mentality as a society sometimes. Like, oh, should I be bad? Should I order fries too? It's almost a playful gluttony, I guess. But I started to do that a little bit more, and I definitely don't blame those relationships. That would be foolish of me, but it was something that added to my weight gain. Over the next couple years of high school, I started to put on some weight, and I think part of it was because I felt very lonely. After freshman year, my best friend at the time and I kind of had a falling out, and I kind of went into sophomore year without a friend group. That's when I started dating someone, but he was a senior and he had a different lunch period than me, and I was kind of on my own. I didn't know who to sit with. This girl who was in choir with me, a very kind person, she asked me to come and sit at her table with her, and she was very popular. All the people she sat with were very popular, and so I would sit with her and her friends every day, and I wouldn't necessarily joke and engage that much, but I was there. I had somewhere that I belonged. Until that girl went away, every year she had this period of time where she would be out of school touring with a singer. And so I continued to sit with this group of people, and one day I got to the table and my chair wasn't there. There was no space for me. And so I tried to pull a chair in, and one of the guys, the class clown, he said, "Why do you sit with us? Nobody here even likes you." I was a bit stunned by it, and I got up and left. I went to the choir hall while choir was happening, and I sat and I ate there. I would sit and eat by myself and listen to the choir singing. And so eating became a very solitary, shameful event for me. At some point, they outlawed eating in the choir hall, and by this time I was a senior, and because I was an editor on the yearbook, I had a key to the yearbook room, and I would go in there and I would eat by myself still hadn't worked up the courage to go and eat lunch in the lunchroom, that I didn't try all of my junior year, didn't try at the beginning of senior year. Finally, one of my friends found out that I was eating by myself and said, "We have the same lunch period, why don't you come and sit in the senior lounge?" That was the first time that I felt okay going back to the cafeteria. And I was even really nervous the first time. I felt like I was gonna have the same experience of, no, you can't sit with us, that Mean Girls moment, but it didn't happen, and I ate my lunch in there for the rest of the year with some great people. I know I kind of sped through sophomore and junior year, but it was a really solitary time for me. And during that time, I was slowly gaining weight. So between starting high school and my senior year, I had gained probably about 60 pounds. So I'd filled out quite a bit. And now I was a little bit on the chubbier side, and I still felt big, but I'd always felt big. And I had another cluster of symptoms happening beyond the weight gain. Irregular periods. My mom took me to see my doctor. She thought that I might have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and she wanted me to go see an endocrinologist to make sure that it wasn't a thyroid issue first. And both of my parents went with me to that appointment for some reason, but we were sitting and waiting, and the doctor came in and he said, "Well, everyone in the room is obese," which as a 17-year-old girl is very hard to hear, especially when you know that you feel overweight and you want to do something to fix it. He didn't even really console me in any way, because he told me that with my situation, I would have to eat half as much as a normal person to maintain the weight that I was. That's not really possible or safe. And why is a doctor telling a 17-year-old that? It made it feel hopeless. It made it feel like, well, I can either starve myself or keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I guess I'm just gonna be big. I think that's one of the biggest things that I look back on and think, oh, if only I could talk to myself at that age and say, adults don't always get it right. Sometimes they say things without thinking for dramatic effect or whatever reason, and they don't realize the impact it's gonna have on someone who doesn't have a fully developed brain and has all of these emotions and feelings and doesn't have a global perspective. They're gonna take that and absorb it and take it to heart in a way that could be dangerous. So like the birthing hips comment, this is another example of an adult saying something without understanding the impact. But this was pretty callous, I would say. I think the worst example that I have of having an adult who I'm supposed to respect tell me something derogatory or hurtful was a situation where, and I'm gonna try to keep it vague because I'm not trying to put anyone on blast, but a choir director that I had perceived a situation incorrectly in class and chewed me out. And I asked him after class if I could talk to him. I think it's because it was the end of my senior year and I felt a little bit more like an adult with informed opinions, and I thought, you know, I should clarify this situation so that he knows that I wasn't making fun of him. A funny situation happened where someone's voice cracked and we had a little laugh and he perceived it as us making fun of him. So I asked him if I could talk to him, and when we talked, he ended up saying some pretty hurtful things to intentionally hurt me. The first of which was that I wasn't going to win the Most Valuable Soprano award. He'd already seen all the votes, and the reason was that nobody liked me. He said the bass section complained about me all the time, and I was friends with a lot of people in the bass section. But even if that was the case, that is not a conversation that you should be having with a young woman in your class if you want to build them up. He also said that he could tell that I was frustrated with my placement in the choreography for our end of the year concert, and he explained to me, and I'll never forget these words, our choreographer likes to put the attractive people in the front. And while I disagree with that personally, that is her choice. And I knew at the time that he was out of line. And I knew logically that it wasn't true. But having that poor self-image and hearing that from someone I was supposed to respect, it's hard to get past something like that. So by the time I graduated high school, I had been told by respected adults in my life that I was fat, unlikable, and unattractive. That's a cocktail for self-esteem disaster, in my opinion. So on the weight gain side, my senior year I had gained probably another 20 pounds, and I had gotten my PCOS diagnosis, so at least I knew what was going on with me. But at the time, I was roughly 180 pounds, which can be categorized as a little bit overweight. However, I was 5'7", I was very well developed, hourglass figure, and I should have been happy. I should have been so happy with how I looked at the time. I had a beautiful womanly figure, and I couldn't see it that way. And unfortunately, that's where we pause this story for now, because the next video is about when I went off to college. Like I said, if there's one thing that I could tell myself in high school, it's that adults don't always get it right. And I know that now as an adult myself, that I don't always get it right. I don't always advise the people in my life with the best words of wisdom or kindness. I'm an imperfect human, and everyone is an imperfect human. And sometimes people just act really cruel to others because it makes them feel better or bigger or stronger, and you can't let it get to you. You have to focus on the beautiful things about yourself. So that's where I'm gonna stop this video, but make sure you come back next week because I'm gonna continue the story with my college days. If you liked this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get notifications when I post new videos, like the rest of this story and my other series happening in June. And I will talk to you on Wednesday. Bye.